All right, we're live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to February 20th, 2024 Operations, Management, Budget, and Government Accountability Committee meeting. I am Councilman Amilcar Hernandez, and I am your chair for this committee. This meeting is broadcasting live on HPA-TV's Xfinity Government Channel 96 and Frontier Government Channel 6032. It will also be streamed via hpa-tv.org, HPA-TV Facebook page, and HPA-TV Apple TV, Amazon TV, and Roku TV apps. It will also be made available on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. I would like to acknowledge a few of my council members here. I see here non-voting member, Council President Shirley Surgeon here. I see voting member, Councilman John Gale, voting member, Councilwoman Rosado, and that's about it. I also see here from the city, I'd like to acknowledge Tom Nelson. He's the project manager from DDS. Let's see, Christian Corza, Deputy Chief of Staff from the Mayor's Office. Matthew Straub, new Housing Director from DDS. And that's about it from the city side. And obviously, Noelia. Can't forget Noelia. If I forget Noelia, I get in trouble. So Noelia from my office, from the City Council office. So on to next agenda, we have 3 items. And I'm going to start with the first item, and then Tony, if you don't mind, once I do, can you introduce the folks from the developer side that were invited? Item 2.1 is Mayor Auto Lamplan with accompanying resolution authorizing the City of Hartford to enter into a 15-year tax abatement agreement with MLK Apartments LLC, the owner, for rental housing units to be developed at 99 Van Block Avenue, Hartford, Connecticut. And I believe that Matt Straub and Tom Nelson are here to speak on this item. And if you don't mind, please also introduce the folks from the developer side that's also joining us as well.
Will do. Matt, would you mind introducing the folks from the development team?
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to meet everyone. So today we're working with 2 sponsor developer partners. Emily Wolf, the Executive Director of Sheldon Oak Central, a Hartford-based CDC in the Sheldon Charter Oak neighborhood, as well as Aaron Greenblatt and Ali Mashad from Vesta Partners, a developer based in Simsbury, who is Sheldon Oak's partner on the deal. And then Tone's going to be handling the presentation today, or taking the lead on the presentation today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions to the extent that I'm the right person to answer them.
Well, thank you, Matt, and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Want to say Happy New Year's to everybody. We haven't spoken since December sometime, and congratulate Madam President Shirley Surgeon on her appointment as the President of Council. And also want to congratulate you, Councilman Hernandez, on your successful bid for election. And good afternoon, Councilman Gale. Without any further ado, what we're here to do today is present to you the recommendation that the committee consider and favorably recommend to Council an approval of the resolution for the project known as MLK Apartments, which is basically an existing development that is going to be redeveloped by those folks that Matt mentioned earlier, Sheldon Oak and Vesta Corporation. Currently, the project is composed of 64 units, was designed and built in the early 60s, probably completed in the mid 60s, 64, 67, somewhere around there. It's 64 units. The redevelopment will consist of 155 units, which is an improvement in terms of number of units by more than 50%, or 100%, I should say. The units there will be also affordable to people who earn 50% or 60% AMI. As you may know, this time around, you guys gotten a little extra information because you've gotten the memo that we sent to the mayor, in addition to the letter that we sent to Council President and the copy of the resolution. So to go over the merits of the project, this is the last of the sizable projects in that properties in that neighborhood. Like I said, it's 64 units will be converted to 155 units. The other projects that were done within the last 10 years, 10 to 12 years, as well as Cape Wool Lofts, Colt Gateway, as we know, was done maybe 20 years ago, but it's still in existence and still it's current in its design. There was the Capewell Townhomes, which is a home ownership project the city also sponsored that resulted in 16 home ownership units. That was done in 2011. There's Stonington Acres, which is a 34 or 45 unit redevelopment, also owned by Sheldon Oak, where Sheldon Oak Central is a managing member of the LLC. There's the Dutch Point Rental Project 1 and 2, which was done in 2004, 2007, which is composed of 127 units. And most recently, the council council approved an abatement for Dillon Place Apartment Homes, which is located at 55 Hendrickson Street Avenue, 54 Hendrickson, which is just behind this property. The abatement that we are requesting, and as part of the resolution, is a 15-year abatement for the project. It's going to run coterminous with the tax credit compliance period, which is what we normally do. And that will start once the city has issued a temporary certificate of occupancy or a certificate of occupancy. Their agreement will, again, is for 15 years. It will require the owner to pay $110,000 for the first year, which exceeds, and this is an important point, is it exceeds the current tax rate for those projects, for the existing project, which is $108,000. So once we convert this, the city will gain in general revenue through tax collection. Now, the amount that is expected of the developer, the applicant, to pay increases by 10% every year, to the point where by the 15th year, they're actually paying somewhere around 82% they're paying 74%. I'm sorry, last year, 15th year, 81% of the assessed taxes, of the estimated assessed taxes. And I say estimated because, as we know, sometimes the taxes could go up, sometimes the taxes could go down based on the needs of the city and based on the adjustments to the mill rate and the value of the property. In addition to the taxes that they are to pay, another point that a merit for this project is, again, it will increase the number of units from 64 to double that amount to 100, more than double, to 155 units of affordable housing. The property is already restricted as affordable, so all we're doing is we're not expanding that affordability. We're just increasing the affordability on the existing property. Roughly 38 of the units are be leased to people who are earned 50% AMI, and the other 117 will be leased to those people who earn 60% AMI, or area median income for most of us. Construction is to start in 2024 and should be completed in 2026. The developer has agreed to set aside 15% of the total construction costs for city certified contractors and enterprises. They'll also be required to set aside 30% of all project work hours by Hartford residents, and 15% of all trade work be performed by women and minority trade workers. Again, this project, another part, which is this is a prevailing wage project. It's prevailing wage because of the number of project-based certificates, Section 8 certificates. So prevailing wage, meaning, as you all know, that they'll have to pay the prevailing wage rate for this municipality, which is a good opportunity so that folks can earn not more than just living wage, they can earn prevailing wage. And the general language that's in the agreement, which I will cover for those folks who are listening, is that the agreement is non-assignable, non-transferable, without permission of the city, except for in those cases where it's permitted. So, for example, if the lending institution should foreclose, it will be transferred to the lending institution automatically. And anyone who buys that mortgage from the lending institution or takes control of that property as a result of foreclosure through the lending institution, the abatement will be transferred to automatically. I've already mentioned the fact that they have to set aside a certain dollar amount and certain number of hours for city certified minority and women-owned businesses, city residents, and minority and female trade workers. There's also a community benefit, which is where the developer will contribute 1% of the total abated taxes to the city Department of Development Services for it to be used at its discretion for any plans that are devised going forward. So mainly at the moment, we're talking about using that money for housing. I know here it talks about for housing or community neighborhood development and or activity. At the moment, we are looking at that, and we're still reserving this money and hoping this money will be used to create housing opportunities or rental opportunities for Hartford residents. There's a cancellation right for the city to cancel if they default on the agreement. And it also talks about there's a clawback requirement, Mr. Chair, which requires the developer or the owner in this case, to pay the city 10% of any proceeds if they should sell the property with city permission, of course, to an investor or someone who is other than part of this party to the agreement. And lastly, but not least, we've learned that if we don't expect and set a timeline on when this agreement will expire, that people will unsigned if it's not accepted in a reasonable amount of time, that in some cases people will not actually execute the agreement, and it will sit for a while and it'll come back. In order to encourage that this not happen, this agreement will automatically be rescinded if it's not signed by the contracted parties within 90 days of the city submitting it to them as our final version. If there are any questions that you may have at this point in time that I can answer, Matt can answer, or a member of the development team who is in the waiting room, I believe, will be able to answer, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Before I open the floor for my council colleagues to ask questions, I'd like to acknowledge the attendance of our Assistant Majority Leader, TJ Clark, who joined us just right after I introduced everybody else, and then our Corporate Counsel, Jonathan Harding, as well, who also joined us as well. Council colleagues, is there any questions? Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Nelson or anybody from DDS or even the developers that are in attendance today? Council President Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nelson, and for your presentation, and thank you, Mr. Strupp, for attending your first committee meeting. Welcome. Question, looking at this, we didn't say how the 64,000 or 59, I'm sorry, 64 million or 59 million is going to be funded. Is it from the state? How much is the contribution from the actual developer themselves? I didn't see the term for the funding.
Well, thank you, Madam President, for that question. The bulk of the funding is coming from the state through tax credits. There's some, and if I will be honest with you, Madam President, if I may defer that to one of the development team members, I can provide you with that information. I'd have to look for it. And I can give you rough numbers, but they may be have more intimate knowledge about it or current, be able to answer that question quickly. If you like, I can look for it, and I can go over it with you, share it with you. But I think at this point in time, it might be more beneficial for those guys to answer that question.
To you,
Allie,
Mr.
I
Chair.
think, is the right person to hop in there.
Sure.
And Allie, I did see you come off mute.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to attend. My name is Allie Mashad. I work for Vesta Corporation, as Mr. Nelson mentioned. So we have quite a long capital stack here for this redevelopment. The permanent mortgage will be provided by CHFA. That's about $20 million, that permanent mortgage. As Mr. Nelson started to mention, this project will develop low-income housing tax credit equity. That's about $27 million for this project. The Connecticut Department of Housing is providing a $4 million soft loan. They are also providing home funds. Those two sources combined are about $12 million. The developer is deferring 50% of the fee, which is the maximum deferral that CHFA allows. That's about $3 million. And then Connecticut is also providing $3.75 million through the Community Investment Fund.
And that totals, thank you very much, Ms. Mashad. And that total the 59 of the 64 million.
65
so try to
million.
add as you went along.
That's total development budget, Madam
Yes.
President.
The 59 million.
No, it's a 64 million, 64.5, 64.8. So the 59 million is composed of those various sources she mentioned.
Okay, and the difference, but you said the current budget is 64 million.
Total
Yes.
development budget.
Okay.
So there's a total development budget, construction budget. So we mentioned the construction budget of 59 million, and then we mentioned a total development budget of 64.8 million.
And the information Ms. Mashad just gave us, that was the construction budget.
No, that was the total.
The total
permanent
64
development
million.
budget. Yes,
Okay.
yeah, 64.
Just trying to add myself back. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And you got to excuse, I got a little bit of a cold here. Couple of questions, if I may. The breakdown of taxes that you have provided, this 15-year phase-in, as I recall, we have done something similar with a couple of Hartford Housing Authority projects, I think both Park and Westbrook Village have a schedule of tax payments that are being made per unit at this point. I'm just wondering, A, if I'm right about that, and B, how these tax payments per unit compare to the other tax payments for units that we have entered into with other developers.
So first of all, yes, you're correct. Where it is based on per unit, however taxes are collected annually collectively per unit. So we mentioned it per unit in the memorandum to the mayor. And it's also mentioned per unit in the cover letter to Council President. In terms of similarities, it's very similar to some of the others where there is an increase. The increase is not as progressive and with the others. And at some point in time, to answer the question just based on memory, Councilman Gale, I don't think those projects ever meet the level of payment where they're paying almost 85% or 81, 82% of what we estimate to be the assessed taxes. Their payment is a little less because of various reasons, cost, and mainly that's it, cost and debt. But if you'd like, I can look that up for you, Mr. Councilman.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, so this is not formulaic.
No.
We're not simply plugging in a formula and coming up with the amount of taxes. You're pretty much doing this on a case-by-case basis. And if I understand correctly, you're doing it on the basis of what the project can actually afford.
Right. So it is formulaic in a sense, right? It's just that we don't apply one standard number to all projects. Basically what we do is as I talked about once before, is we base it on debt coverage ratio. which is the amount of money the person, the debt coverage ratio is the dollar amount that a person, a project has to earn in order to cover $1 worth of debt. And generally, we always underwrite these projects such as these to meet that coverage ratio, because that way we can ensure that the project will be able to secure the funding. So formulaic in the sense that we calculate them all the same or based on the same rationale, yes. Formulaic in the sense that we apply the same number to all of them, no.
Okay, got it. So I have two more questions, if I may. I believe you mentioned that these properties are all already, the land, I guess, on which the project is going to be developed is already deed restricted. And I take that to mean that as a result of prior financing, no doubt from either CHFA or DOH, Department of Housing, the state put some restrictive covenants on the land requiring that for some long period of time, perhaps forever, the property has to be developed and be available for people who meet these affordable definitions. Do I have that correct?
Yes, you do. And I believe that was with HUD funds.
It was with HUD funds. Okay.
Yes.
So just an interesting, I just throw this out there, wondering if consideration and please, Ms. Wolf or Mr. Greenblatt or Ms. Michaud, if you want to jump in here. I'm just wondering if any thoughts being given on these projects going forward to trying to introduce some modest component of market rate housing. And again, I'm kind of referring back to what's been done with the Hartford Housing Authority on Westbrook Village and Bowles Park, where I believe each of those has a component of market rent, so that we're trying to take some of our housing and mix it up a tad over time. So wondering if anybody has any particular thoughts on that at this time.
If you don't mind, Councilman, those projects they have market rate units as a requirement of some of the tax credit financing. In this case, they didn't seek the same type of tax credit financing. Now, there is some opportunity where they can possibly increase the affordability, the AMI levels to 80%. However, in that case, or even some market rate units. But in that case, what will happen is they'll lose a significant amount of funding through the tax credit funding. But I will do this. I will defer that to Emily or to Alexandria or Aaron, one of the development team members, who may be better able to answer that in a way that, since they're technically involved with the project, I'm looking at information supplied. They can provide explanation based on their application. Emily or Alexandria, would you care to answer a councilman's question regarding unit mix?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Emily. Sorry, I saw you came off mute as well.
Oh, yeah, thank you for the question. We did look at adding, including a number of market rate units, unrestricted units. But during the planning of this project, the effect of the interest rate increases and the construction cost increases that came in the wake of COVID really kind of constrained what we were able to do. And we needed to rely on the tax credit equity. So in order to get this project built, we are doing 100% affordable. And I just wanted to add that that we've made a commitment to the people who live in the property, who have all been temporarily relocated, that there would be no displacement and that they'll be invited to reapply when the project is completed in 2026. And there will be units available for working families and for low-income families. And in fact, there will be subsidies for lower-income people that didn't exist at MLK as it was operated since 1996 by Sheldon Oak.
And if I may, Councilman, my understanding, the interest rate on the $18 million is 7.1%, where if you looked at it 4 years ago, the interest rate on that $17 million would have been around 5.5%. So those costs make it cost prohibitive in many cases, unless you are awarded something like a 9% tax credit, where you have a higher threshold for construction costs. It makes it almost makes the project cost prohibitive, because now you have to, let's just say you're awarded $200,000. I'll make up a number. For every unit, you get $200,000 in tax credit dollars. This is not necessarily the way it works, but now all of a sudden you don't have that $200,000, and you have to come out of pocket and fund that through some kind of amortizing debt. At say, instead of 17 million, it'll be 19 million for, say, 20 units. At 7.5%, if you do the interest calculation, the interest, and I don't have that number in front of me, but I know I calculated it once before. It's just an astronomical carrying cost in terms of what the interest accrual is. Not that that's the best way I can explain it.
Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate it. And but mostly, not mostly, but I also appreciate Ms. Wolf indicating that they did look at market. And I think that what I'm reflecting on here, and this is, not necessarily anything we're going to decide tonight. I'm not putting it forward for those reasons, but just to have everyone thinking about these things and to plant these things. I'm reflecting back on a prior development services director, Eric Johnson, who made fairly emphatically the point at one time that in some areas of town, because of the fact that all of the housing is restricted, you face a situation where a young person can grow up in their neighborhood there, can actually be somewhat successful, and then be completely unable to stay in their own neighborhood, to live next door to their parents or whatnot, because they actually are making good income and they can't. Every unit of housing is income restricted. So, I think it's something that for all of us to think about going forward. I know it's often been said that Connecticut would probably be a much better state if every single community had 20% affordable housing and nobody had 80%. But don't know if this is the kind of thing that can get us there. But anyway, just to throw that out there. My last question for you has to do with the community benefits agreement. And I'm reflecting now on an internal audit committee report that we received about 2 weeks ago. In that report, it indicated that in 2021, a program was instituted by Development Services to raise funds for community development when a construction project was taking place. And my understanding is that 2021 program is the monies that we're now talking about. Internal audit was critical of the fact that there does not seem to be any policy in place that describes how these monies are actually to be spent. And I think their criticism is well taken. And so I'm really addressing this, I think, to my colleagues at this point. It seems to me that in this, we used to call it a term sheet. This one doesn't look like the old term sheets, but in number 9 of this resolution here, where it's in number 9, where it talks about setting aside $39,000 for community development, community benefits. It seems to me we ought to tack something on there that says that is going to be subject to policy developed and approved by City Council. So I I guess, Mr. Chair, I'll make an amendment at this point in time that well, I don't know if it's appropriate to talk about the motion to send this back. I know there's other council colleagues, so I'll hold off and let other people ask questions, but I'm happy to, when it comes to that, to make a motion to send it back, but with an amendment.
Thank you, Councilman Gill. Yeah, we'll wait for finish up our conversations and then you can make that amendment. I believe Council President Surgeon raised her hand first, so I'll give her the floor.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Giving Mr. Strub, he just started. One of the conversation he and I had, when I first met him, when he first came aboard, is working with the council to come up with a resolution to define how the community benefit, how we will spend it, what are the requirements, so on and so forth. So I'm giving him a little bit of time, for him to sit down with us with some ideas from his department and how we may structure that going forward. So please bear with him. I think he has it on my things to do list.
It is. I've had some conversations with the mayor's office already and putting together a memo. My personal priority, given that Hartford is a city of renters and this is to support rental housing, is to use these funds to the extent possible to support homeownership initiatives. And kind of putting together some proposals that may be recognizing that this really is a very limited amount of money in the scope of a homeownership project to try and identify impactful ways that it can be used.
Well, if you don't mind sending us over before a resolution, that is going to come out of the council's office, and the policy of what we would like to see happen, and give the council. That's something I know Councilman Rosado just been working for several months now. So the conversation, I would ask you if you will have it with the council, because
Sure.
I believe council members have some ideas of how they would like to see that happen and sponsor that resolution and the policy for that. So if you have ideas, if you could send it to us, we'll gladly set up a meeting and discuss it with you.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
Thank you.
Assistant Majority Leader TJ Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, question: when is the closing expected for this project?
It's expected in March, mid-March.
Okay, and how many units again are we talking about regarding this development project?
155.
And out of that 155, can you tell me an average of what the income brackets are?
Sure.
tenants?
So within those 155, 117 will be restricted at 60% of the area median income, and 38 will be restricted at 50% of the area median income.
Thank you for that. Emily had mentioned the fact that, apologize for the background noise. Emily had mentioned the fact regarding that they have been quote unquote displaced for temporarily. Where are they currently located?
Emily or
Yeah,
Ally?
we worked with a relocation consultant to find appropriate and comparable rental housing. Most of the people wanted to stay in the neighborhood, and we were able to accommodate them because Sheldon Oak owns 400 apartments, affordable apartments nearby within blocks of the site. A couple of people bought their own homes and moved into them, and some people moved into other towns. But we're in touch with them, and we're going to let them know when we're going to beginning lease up for the new units.
Thank you. And they do have the first right of refusal when these units come back online?
Not the first right of refusal, but they have to qualify for the unit, and they're being invited back to apply.
What mirrors the qualifications of them being invited back?
Income qualifications.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Clark. Council President Surgeon.
Sorry, one last question through you, Mr. Chair. We didn't see the breakdown of the units. We just went from 64 to 155. How many 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms? What is the breakdown, the number of units?
Ally, do you have that handy?
I do. So there will be 70 one-bedroom units. There will be 63 two-bedroom units. And there will be 22 three-bedroom units.
And so all the units will be the 50 or the 60% AMI.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Council President. Now, before I go to my colleague, Council Gale, are there any other questions? Mr. Nelson?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. If I may, Councilman Gale had raised a question about number of affordable units in the neighborhood, and I just wanted to respond to that. So there are, you're right, Councilman Gale, the city's looking to have a more blended income environment. I think the 80% folks are sometimes their needs are not being met. However, let me just tell you that in that neighborhood, Colt Gateway is all market rate. The Capewell Lofts is all with the exception of one is market rate. And there are some neighboring properties that aren't part of some of these major developments. So for example, you have Charter Oak Avenue, which is comprised of privately owned condominiums or apartment buildings that are also market rate. So there is a presence or a number of market rate units, in addition to some of those that we earlier discussed that are were sponsored or supported through the city through various programs. So, for example, Colt Dutch Point and Stonington Acres, and now this particular project, which is MLK Apartments, Martin Luther King Apartments.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Nelson, for that explanation, and I understood. So, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation. However, with the following additional language, and this language would be at the end of the sentence that begins as part of the community benefit. This is in number 9 of the list of resolves. It says, as part of the community benefit, ... development services to use in its sole discretion for neighborhood development and or activity. I would add there after the word activity, and I'll provide the language after the meeting, but I would add pursuant to a policy to be developed and approved by City Council. So this should not stop the project at all. I'm not looking to hold anything up. The project can move forward, but development services can't spend this money until somebody's come back to us with a policy. That's the idea.
Understood, Councilman.
I second that.
Okay, motion has been made and second by TJ Clark. Do we have any comments? All right. So this is where I draw a blank and
you ask for a vote.
I ask for a vote, yes. So those in favor of sending this back with a favorable recommendation with the proposed amendment by Councilman Gale, please say so by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it since everybody voted aye. And we will be sending this back to council with a favorable recommendation with the amendment that Councilman Gale introduced. Right.
Thank you, members of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You're more than welcome to stay. But if not, then we will be moving to our next item on the agenda. And what I will do, I will be skipping to the third item to allow a little bit of more time to see if the tax assessor shows up. But we will move on to item 2.3, which is Mayor Plan with accompanying ordinance establishing the procedure necessary for flag raisings at City Hall with a public hearing today, Tuesday, February 20th at 7 p.m. I believe we have Christian Corza from the Mayor's Office and Corporation Counsel Jonathan Harding to speak on this item. The floor is
Thank you
yours.
so much, Mr. Chair. It's great to see you and all of your council colleagues, as well as some of my colleagues on the city side. I know Attorney Harding is here just in case there might be some questions about the legality of the ordinance, but I'll also do my best to answer any other questions that folks might have. So the ordinance is relatively straightforward. I know previously flag raisings were done at the discretion of the mayor's office. The ordinance establishes more rigid guidelines as to how that process is actually carried out, and ensures that flags that are raised are flags of nations with which the United States has diplomatic relations, and that's of course all defined by the United States Department of State. So the list of those nations can be found online as well as flags displayed in conjunction with events, ceremonies, anything else contained in the council resolution, as well as sports teams. So it basically requires that any flag raising be done in conjunction with a city council resolution for that flag raising. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there's any part of that I missed that Attorney Harding wants to add some extra context to.
All right, seeing no, do we have any of my colleagues that would like to ask a question? Any comments? System Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. The language, I know that was discussed versus what's been placed in the ordinance. Is the preference given, I'll use the word preference, given to those that have a diplomatic relationship with currently with the United States?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Any flag raising that has to be done, the flag has to be a flag of a nation that is that has diplomatic relations with the United States, if it is a nation, right? If it's like a sports team or anything else, that's at the discretion of the council. But if it's another nation, then yeah, there must be established diplomatic relations.
But if it's a nation that does not have diplomatic relationships currently with the United States, that's something that the council would need to enter a resolution for approval, correct?
Yes.
Is there a list that we can be provided regarding those nations that have diplomatic relationships?
Yes, I'm happy to send that out to the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Majority Leader.
I have one more question, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Procedurally, we can't vote on this until this has been, not just with the public hearing, but this has been noticed for 2 meetings in a row, correct?
I believe so. I don't want to misspeak. I don't know if Attorney Harding knows it for sure, or if Council President knows.
Yeah, if I may, Councilman Clark, yeah, all council rules would still apply to this ordinance as any other.
Thank you, Mr. Corporation Counsel.
All right,
So, through you, Mr. Chair, if we can take it up now, what is your suggestion?
well, it seems like, I mean, my intent was to, discharge this item, right after the public hearing, but if it has to be in 2 cycles, I'm not sure, is it already?
Yes. It's an ordinance.
So 2 cycles will be that it has to be on the agenda for the next meeting, but we cannot do anything with it during the next meeting on the 26th? Is that what I hear?
Right, because the ordinance has to go through 2 cycles of council. So normally what we would do, we would table the item after public hearing and actually have in-depth conversation for next council meeting, next committee meeting in March. So, by that time, by the time it gets back on the agenda, it'll be 2 council cycle.
Honestly, the intent wasn't to hold this, any longer than it needs to. So I really would like to double check to see if after the next council meeting, if I have the ability of discharging it, since we are having the conversation now, unless something happened in the public hearing that we have to take on and have a conversation about. So we don't have to wait for the next OMB meeting on next month. Is that what, Council President, you're suggesting, to wait for the next OMB meeting and the next month?
Right, because you have a council meeting, which is Monday. Then you have another council meeting, the beginning of March.
But it's already been on the agenda for the last council meeting. Wouldn't that
No,
count as the first cycle?
Two council meeting after comes on the agenda.
Okay, I need a
Mr.
more.
Chair, I have a modest suggestion.
Sure.
I think that what we've done in the past on matters like this is get a sense in the committee as to whether folks are favorable to it without taking a particular vote, because we all
Right.
have to hold ourselves open for the prospect that somebody at public hearing could bring up a point that none of us thought about, and now it's, you know, it's not a good idea. But barring us hearing something at public comment that would cause everybody to change their minds, if there's consensus that this seems like something we want to pass forward, we can simply table it or postpone it here in committee, and you as the chair can discharge it. It wouldn't come with any recommendation, but we know that we're going to be inclined to support. You could discharge it not before the next council meeting, because to council president's point, it can't be acted on any sooner than the third council meeting. But you could then discharge it before the second council meeting in March, and we could act on it at that time without waiting for another OMB meeting.
Okay, I think I have one cycle off from what I hear. I thought that the first cycle will be considered the last meeting where it was on the agenda last meeting, and that would count as the first cycle. But if the statute or rules state that it has to be 2 cycles after the public hearing, then yes, that's my intent will be to get a sense of where we are with this, pending, you know, what happens after the public hearing, and then, you know, potentially discharge it, you know, after, you know, the next public hearing, the next council meeting, so we could take it on. Councilwoman Rosado, you're on mute.
So I know in the past, we have waited for 3 cycles, but we have also done it in 2 cycles where we've had the OMBGA meeting followed by a public hearing. The item has stayed in committee, postponed, and then the chair has been able to discharge it so it gets on the agenda. I know that in my tenure on council, I've done that 3 times already. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and by the way, I agree. I misspoke. I didn't mean to imply that you had to wait for 2 more. I didn't realize we have another council meeting in February, so my apologies.
Right. Yes.
I
So my recommendation.
I agree with council president and former council president. There's 2 meetings is all we need, and then
Yes.
the third one. So the first meeting in March, presumably we could do it.
Right.
Thank
So
you.
Sorry for the confusion.
no. When it's introduced, it's not considered the first council. It's just an introduction of it.
Understood.
But I have a question to regarding the flag raising, and I'm trying to figure the process out. So a request comes into the mayor's office, Mr. Corza, sorry, I apologize. You know, regarding, you know, they want the flag raised. What is the process? How does it get back to council? You know, what is the process, or is it the request always comes to council? Just want to figure the process out.
I think, thank you for the question. I think we can figure out ways that works for all folks involved. I know if council is going to take up the resolution for flag raising, then the request should go straight to council. So that would be my inclination, would be just to, I don't know if there's already an intake form set up somewhere that was previously used for flag raising requests for the mayor's office. Maybe that can be repurposed for the request to go straight to council for flag raisings.
Sorry.
If I may, Madam President, very quickly,
Sure.
if I can assist, I apologize if we're cutting you off. I think in the idea is that the purpose of this is to maintain our flagpoles as a part of city speech and not necessarily as public speech. So the idea is that members of council would put forward resolutions based on what they're hearing from constituents or informal requests from constituents, and then decide if they want that expression to be made a city expression, rather than, as other systems where the flagpoles are reserved as a place of public expression, and there's an application process and any member of the public is encouraged to apply for flag raising. I think the idea is that members of council will know from their constituents, what expressions they are asking for the city to make as an expression of the council and as an expression of the city as an institution. I'm not sure if that clarifies it, but the point is, the idea is that this would not be a formal system where members of the public get to take ownership over the flagpoles. It would rather be an opportunity for the city council to make an expression on behalf of the city. And that expression may be a result of, requests from the public, obviously, but it doesn't have to be.
I guess through you, Mr. Chair, guess what I'm asking is, a constituents, I don't know, Barbados, I'm going to use as an example, celebrating their independence. Where does the request go to? Trying to make sure alleviate the confusion. Well, I send it to the council or I send it to the mayor. Is that an internal conversation, that we need to have to come up with a process, with an application process? Is that something we need to have internally? So everyone will be on the same page of how this is going to be accomplished?
Through you, Chair, Madam President, it could be. It does not have to be.
The only reason I ask, because just looking at the ordinance, it sort of tells us, if you have good standing with the United States, fine. If not, then the council, as you said, can make a decision for the expression for the city of Hartford. So therefore, if a country has good standing and request, the flag to be raised, that request is sent to the mayor's office. Am I understanding this?
Mm-hmm.
No,
If I may, Madam President, it could, sure. A constituent could reach out to the mayor's office and say, hey, we have this event going on. It'd be really great if we had a flag raising in support of this. But ultimately, the mayor's role in that would be to forward that to council for this body's consideration.
The ones with good standing or not good standing?
Any flag raising.
So regardless of if there's a country in good standing, so any request needs to be approved by council.
That is, yes, that was how it was requested to be drafted, and that's how it's presented. Obviously, if this body believes that there's a better process than council passing a resolution, any amendments that match your procedures better are, you'd be open. I'd be open to hearing them, but yeah, that's the way it's drafted presently.
Yeah, I'm going to hold my thoughts until I hear from my colleagues. So Councilwoman Rosado, please.
Okay. So going back to Council President's question. So let's pretend I'm a resident. I'm from Peru. I would like to put in a request to raise the flag. I, as an individual, have to lobby a council member to actually put this resolution forward for me. What happens if I find no council member that wants to put this resolution forward? One, what will happen then? And are we going to run another risk like Boston when they didn't want to raise the clergy flag and then it went into a lawsuit to the municipality and eventually got up to the Supreme Court? Because
sure. Sure, Councilwoman Rosado, there's obviously no guarantee that any policy will address all potential litigation risk. But the point is that the use of our flagpoles is for city expression. That is, if there is a constituent desire that aligns with the views of this body can make that expression.
Okay. And what would happen if the body doesn't want to raise that flag?
Then this body would not need to pass such a resolution.
But then that could open up the room for the individual requesting to sue us, whether it be discrimination.
Right. And the idea is that this isn't a formal request because the use of the flagpole is an expression of the city, not of the constituent. To your point, if there's a member of the public that asks and believes that there's a reason for this flag raising, it's something for the council to be considered. But the flagpoles are not a public forum for every constituent to raise the flag of their desire. It is the reflection of this council as to what its desires to make an expression are.
So in order to not put any council member, if there is someone that addresses a council member and say, could you, put in a resolution, could we perhaps have further conversation, like a request put in through, our website, like they do with FOIs, and then it just goes to a city council or to the clerk's office, and then it's forwarded to city council, and then amongst us, we speak about it?
Yeah, I think we can have those conversations, Councilwoman.
Okay.
Whatever, like Attorney Hardy mentioned, whatever procedurally makes sense for you as council members, we're happy to talk through it with folks.
Okay.
Thank you. Assistant Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I want to make a suggestion that based upon the list of countries that's going to be provided to us, that according to that list, that there's I would say an automatic approval of that being raised, and for it to go, and there'll be information on the website, and that will go directly to the mayor's office for coordination. And those list of countries that are not on according to that list, then that will be up for council to have a conversation and consider in entering into a resolution. So that way, I think it can be a line of demarcation with full transparency and understanding, so that they won't be, that will alleviate any type of confusion or miscommunication from the executive branch to the legislative branch.
Councilwoman Rosado.
So to what just Councilman Clark said, what would happen if for some reason, I mean, I can't predict the future, we suddenly wake up and we're not in good standing with one of those mentioned in this? Where would that leave us?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yeah, sure.
Again, I think the line of demarcation understanding is whatever that list is. And then obviously, I think that would have to be a running list based upon our U.S. diplomatic policy. But that list is the list that we will go off of having good standing relationships with the United States for approval, automatic approval.
Okay, I mean, I'm gonna go with what the majority through you, Mr. Chair, chooses, but I would not want to be in that situation. Let's say whoever is responsible for keeping up that list doesn't keep up that list, doesn't update it, a request comes in, and because it says automatically, it goes in. I mean, I'm not trying to be, picky here, but the word, automatic, but I'll go with what the majority says.
Councilman Gill.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So couple of thoughts and comments here. And I'm putting my lawyer hat here and appreciating our Corp Council's drafting. And I'm actually got the ordinance in front of me. Subsection G of this ordinance says very clearly, flagpoles are not intended to serve as a forum for free expression by the public. And so to me, that's a statement that we're making as a city that says, you can't sue us for free expression, because this isn't free expression. This is our flagpole, belongs to the city of Hartford, and we're going to fly whatever flags we want. And I take it Corp Council believes that will withstand muster in a court, that this has been attempted at places, and that this will stand up against a challenge. So that being said, my understanding is that this ordinance really says nobody can demand that their flag is flown, but anybody's flag can be flown if we approve it, except, and I think people may have misconstrued this, I'm going to give you 3 countries that the United States does not have diplomatic relations with: Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. And I think they're the only 3. But I think the way this is currently worded, even if we pass a resolution, we couldn't fly Cuba's flag, because this says the only flags we can fly are those countries that we do have diplomatic relations with if there's a resolution of council. So to Councilman Clark, to your point, we could amend that and say, we could leave it to the mayor. We could say council, essentially any country that we have diplomatic relations with, upon receipt of a request, the mayor's office has the discretion to agree to flying it. And any country that we don't have diplomatic relations with would come back to council. And if that's the way you want to go with that, I can certainly help us put forward an amendment, or perhaps our corp counsel can put forward an amendment that states that.
And I will state that originally I thought that was the intent, that we were going to have an ordinance that speaks to that, to what Councilman Clark and Councilman Gale spoke to, that if there is diplomatic relationships, that then there's no need for council resolution to be in place. But in any other instances, like the ordinance mentioned, sports team and special events, those I understand. So is that I mean, I believe I spoke to the administration about this particular item, and I believe that it is I got a little bit of a pushback on this. So is there a particular liability or special circumstance that will not allow for this proposal to be included?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will defer that one to Attorney Harding. I know he mentioned to me when I spoke to him about that particular concern, there were like the memorialization piece of it and making sure that the decision itself is recorded somewhere was the main concern with that, but I'll let him add to that.
If I may, Chair, through you, 2 things. One, whether we're inclined to fly the flag of nations that we do not have diplomatic relations with, I guess, is something that we could expand, but that's a policy decision that I won't advocate one way or the other, I suppose. With regard to whether a type of flag can be fast-tracked based on its status, again, for me, the question becomes, who is making the request? The idea is that our flagpoles are not a public forum. So if you were to adopt an application process where members of the public can apply, and then those applications are automatically approved, the flagpoles being a form of city expression gets eroded very quickly and puts us in a much more dubious position. And then we're beginning to cede that authority to the public for public expression. And then I think we will begin welcoming litigation.
If I may, even if the parameters have been established that it's only under the scenario of nations with diplomatic relationship, not anything else, but just under those parameters, even with those parameters established, you believe that it will still erode the free expression, position or statement?
Yes, Chair, through you, I do. Because as Councilman Gale pointed out, subsection G is really the crux of the policy position that was drafted into this. And the key to that is that our flagpoles are not a forum for public free expression. They are a forum for city expression. And the more streamlined that process becomes, I know as an administrative matter, it may make sense to have members of the public request and have something automatically approved. But once you cede that decision-making authority, essentially, then it is becoming a forum for public expression.
Council President Surgeon?
To you, Mr. Chair. I do believe, to you, Mr. Chair, to Corporation Counsel, that council really wanted to have a little bit more further discussion on this. because again, this stems from, our last term. And I think there's other council members who probably wouldn't be able to make the committee meeting, who basically would like to also, put their point of view in, regarding this. I like the concept, what Councilman Clark mentioned. You have a list of diplomatic, countries on the website, and they put a request into the mayor's office. The mayor's office, of course, since that's what the ordinance says, and raise the flag. Anything thereafter, again, I hear what Councilwoman Rosado is talking about, where coming to council, for sports team or any other reason, it can cause some contentious. Maybe not all the council members, may want to support, I don't know, the last, what is it? Game of, San Francisco against, and so it can become contentious. So I'm not quite sure what the resolution is on this, because I really think there should be more discussion on this.
Councilman Gale, please.
Well, per our prior conversation, certainly prepared to make a motion to postpone this at this time anyway. I see Councilman Clark smiling. And I do think we need to I do think we need to think this through, because as we've been talking, here, take this example, if you will. We do not have, the United States does not have diplomatic relationships with Palestine. We do have diplomatic relationships with Israel. If we had passed this policy, then somebody could demand that the flag of Israel be flown on that flagpole tomorrow, and no one supporting Palestine would have that ability. And I do think that would put us in a very unenviable position right now, one that we probably don't want to, we don't, a road we don't necessarily want to go down right now. So maybe we do want to think about it. And having said all that, I'll move to postpone it at this point.
Second.
All right, motion has been made and second. Those in favor of postponing this item until the next meeting, please say so by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, this item has been postponed, and we have a public hearing actually in a few minutes on this anyway. The next item, we do not have anybody from the administration present to speak on the next item. Do I still have to read the item? Is that procedure that I have to do? Yes, no? Yes?
Through you, Mr. Chair, do we want to postpone because there's no one from the administration?
We are postponing. Do I have to read the actual item?
Okay.
Well, let me read the item for the record, and then we'll make somebody will make a motion to postpone. It will be item 2.2 on the agenda. Mayor Aurolampalan with accompanying ordinance amendment of section 32-18 of the municipal code public with a public hearing Tuesday, February 20th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Since there is nobody from the administration to speak on this item, I will entertain a motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone.
Second.
All right, those in favor, please say
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, this item is officially postponed until the next meeting, and this concludes our committee meeting tonight.
And I would just comment, if I may, Mr. Chair, that in the past, and I trust this would happen in the future, when our assessor does come forward, he usually brings us a breakdown of how much this is anticipated to cost. So that it appears to me that this elderly tax credit amendment is amending it in two ways, both increasing the income limits and increasing the actual amount of the credit available from $750 to $1,000, and increasing the pool of people who are available who could apply by virtue of their income. So there would have to be some numbers attached, and I assume you will bring those. Thank you.
Yeah, I will make sure to pass this suggestion along to the tax assessor. All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, just so you know, this, normally, the assessor is loves to come to our committee meetings, but I think because of the understanding that this item was going to go to public hearing first before it's taking up on the agenda, that's probably why he's not here. But I do know last year, this is a standard ordinance we normally put in, you know, so just take that into consideration.
Thank you, Madam President. Anybody else before we conclude this meeting? All right, we got 20 minutes of break before public hearing. Let's take advantage of it. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.